Hi, this is McLaughlin. This is week 11. In this video, just because week 11 was a catch-up video, you might know catch-up week. You might notice that it's only covering 2 weeks. It's just week 11, the 24th to 26th. It was catch-up, so basically that meant that there wasn't really much to talk about. So I thought I'd just combine them because I don't really want like a 2-minute video. So basically, week 11, as I say, was catch-up week. Because we just finished project 1 that I was talking about last week, was our final one was Choose Your Own Week, where we kind of done genre week. This was kind of a catch-up, kind of sort out work, that kind of thing. Because I'm actually pretty much ahead, I only really used this week to kind of clean up my website, maybe finish up some reflection vlogs, things like that. Nothing massive. One of the biggest things that I'd done this week was actually I'd done a Gosfield shoot. This is to do with a work placement, so it's not part of the college course, but I kind of mention it just because it is a college reflection vlog. I basically went to Gosfield, that is a private school, and I filmed a cross-country kind of thing. This was a big kind of step in the kind of work placement, because it's my first kind of work placement. So what I did, it was emailing them. I filmed. I had two other people with me, so I filmed stuff like that, and overall it was a pretty good shoot. Managed to get some good footage, some good pictures. That was kind of the biggest thing about it. Also, as I mentioned last week, I done Sirius. I've been working on a Sirius Christmas special, so I actually done a lot of advancements in that. So I kind of sorted out sorted out all the kind of game show aspects. I put together a quiz with another person named Chesney, things like that, and I kind of done. That's what I basically spent the week doing. So again, this was a catch-up week, so there's not really much to talk about because it's basically kind of just finishing up loose ends, kind of adding stuff to the website, things like that. I'm not going to count this as like an official week, so I'm not going to do really pros and cons of this week, just because it was very much catch-up and doing little things. So I don't really want to force myself to make a target or pro and con or even really problem solving, because it's not really that kind of week. So just a kind of weird in-between week. But let's just go into the actual, I would say, proper week, and this will be week 12. Okay, so week 12 was at the beginning of the next kind of big thing we're doing. So we've moved away from the kind of genre week, as I've been talking about constantly, but basically we moved on to the group project. So the group project is basically where we work in a group with two or three other people, so groups of 4 or 3, really depends on because we've got a smaller class. We put together a film. I think it's going to take about 3 weeks, maybe even 4 weeks. We put together a film as a group, and we all have roles in it. So let's get into the first day of this week. Okay, so the first day was basically where we made our personal pictures. So this was basically, I don't know, PowerPoint, some people don't Word and stuff like that, but the basic idea of this is that we picture ourselves and our skill sets to the class, so that we can kind of best match it, because you obviously don't want a group of people who all 3 want to do video editing, because it's going to create problems, whereas everyone kind of knows what they want to do, or roughly know what they want to do, they can kind of match them up well. We had the choose 3 job roles, just because there was a lot of overlap and stuff like that. So the 3 jobs that I chose was editing. Obviously I chose editing because I'm specialising in editing. I'm really good at editing. I find editing my biggest kind of strength, and I feel I can bring a lot to the table. My second job role was cinematography. So this is camera work and stuff like that. I found I'm pretty good with camera. I have my own camera, obviously. I do know how to do dynamic shots and stuff like that, and really kind of work it out. I'd say out of the 3 job roles, this was probably my weakest, to be honest, because it's editing and the other one do interest me. Camera work I'm pretty good at, but if someone else wants to do cinematography, especially someone who wants to specialise in cinematography, then it's better for them to do it. And then the final job role, and this is a job I'm probably going to be going with because a lot of people don't really want to do it, and that's director. So the director is kind of person who oversees the entire production. I chose this job role is because, firstly, one of the biggest skills I have is I know a bit of everything. Where people are better at me than say video editing or cinematography, but what I bring to the table is I know every kind of field. So I know, this is how you do cinematography, this is how you do editing, this is how you do blah blah, organisation. So I think that's the biggest advantage, because it sets me apart and stuff like that, and I know a bit of everything. Secondly, I think I have good leadership and organisation skills. As I've mentioned throughout these kind of reflective vlogs, as you're kind of watching through them, is that I'm very good at organising myself and kind of understanding what I need to do, you know, and stuff like that. Compared to other people in my class, obviously, you know, some people have different skills and stuff like that. I think directing would be my role, kind of thing. So the biggest kind of pro today is I thought was my jobs were really well thought out. As you can see in the PowerPoint I'll show on screen, basically what I done was I went over like the pros and cons of why you should pick me and stuff like that. And I thought it was like when the 3 jobs I chose were really kind of well thought out and stuff like that. And like, you know, they made sense, and it wasn't just like I'm choosing random job roles just for the sake of it. I'm actually pitching myself, and I think that's pretty good for the industry, because you kind of have to know in the film industry what you're good at, because there's no point, you know, say pitching yourself as a video editor if you can't video edit it. You know, you have to know what you're good at and really know how to like enable that and stuff like that. But on the other side, I think my big con is that like some of the job roles did lack some detail. I think certainly this is prevalent for cinematography, because it was one of those things where because we had to choose 3, and I was so I really liked editing, and I think directing was my also good calling for me, you know. Cinema was like, you know, something like the third option, cinematography, was kind of weak, and I think if I was to do it again, I would kind of maybe look into more job roles and really look at the bigger field, because there is so many job roles and so many little jobs or big jobs you can have in a kind of film industry environment, especially in a group. And if I chose something that maybe fitted me a bit better, then I could go into more detail. But overall, I think this day was pretty good. It was a good kind of mini kind of start. This was obviously a small lesson. Wednesdays, as I talked about, are very much shorter, and it kind of just, you know, the simple pitch like PowerPoint and stuff like that. And the next day we will be put into groups. So let's go on. Okay, first day we were put into groups. I got grouped with 2 people. I haven't really worked with them before, so this was actually kind of interesting, because they decided to group us with people we haven't really worked with to kind of give us a kind of thing. One of the first things we done as a group was we kind of worked out our job roles, because it's important to really understand from the beginning who wants to do what. We did have a small issue where basically one of our group members unfortunately was very ill, so they couldn't really take part in the kind of job roles and stuff like that. So what we basically decided, me and I was teamed up with Albie, was basically we asked the teacher what they were specialising in and trying to cater to that. So the job roles we decided on was that I'd be the lead director. The reason why was that my partner Albie wasn't the best at directing and stuff like that, and the other person who wasn't there also wasn't really that interested in directing, so I thought, as a person who's good at organisation and stuff like that, I'll take on a lead kind of director in it. So this meant basically I'll be covering more the pre-production. So during the pre-production stage, I'll be covering more of the kind of technical kind of the documents, risk assessments, things like that. During production, I'll be kind of covering acting, obviously, and kind of how the overall picture looks. And then the editing stage, I have a smaller edit. Albie decided to take on cinematography because he's great at cinematography. So this meant that during the pre-production stage, he would be taking on shot lists, things like that, and like storyboards. During the production stage, so he'd be filming, he would be the lead cinematography, and in the editing stage, he would have a small part to edit. And then the third person there, Sarah, who was unfortunately ill, we gave her the editing stage because she's always shown an interest in editing. We checked with our teacher, she was specialising in editing, so forth. That would be the best kind of field for her. We did check for her and she was fine doing the video editing, and basically during the pre-production stage she had less to do. She kind of had like an editing plan, so this is basically where she had the music, kind of what kind of music we wanted, sound effects, stuff like that, so this makes the editing stage easier for her. During the production stage she didn't have very much to do, like kind of more acting and stuff like that, because it obviously need actors, and then during the editing stage she'd done the lead edit, a lot more editing. So then we started getting into like kind of sketching out our ideas. So we started to sketch out 4 very unique ideas and stuff like that, and we kind of talked about them and stuff like that, and then the next day we kind of actually chose the idea and went over it. We tried to be really unique, and I think the biggest thing me and we decided to do together is really kind of grow on each other's ideas, because you kind of have to work in a group. The biggest thing about working in a group is kind of fleshing them out and stuff like that, and really understanding, you know, how to work in a group. So like he would have an idea and I'd go, okay, that could work, and then we kind of worked it out how we could do it and stuff like that. One of the ideas we did favour was this idea of anthology. So the idea that we could do like an anthology kind of thing that would be film students. So that was the kind of idea we went with, but we still kind of sketched out the other ideas. We tried to take in some contacts with the person who was obviously ill and stuff like that, and really try to nail it down. Just before I go into the pros and cons, before I go into the pros and cons, I'll mention just one more thing. This was Seriously Good Christmas quiz that we actually had today, we've been talking about. So let's just go into a quick section about that. Okay, so as I was talking about, I've been talking about for a couple of weeks now. One of the big things I've been taking on, big kind of activity I've been taking on, is the Seriously Good kind of Christmas special. I try and really help out more with Sirius and stuff like that, kind of really get more work placement hours and really understand the industry more. So what I decided to do was take on this kind of big quiz. I kind of code managed it with a person named Chesney, and this was actually the night where we actually put together the quiz. And this was interesting, and this kind of goes into problem solving, as I've been talking about. There was a lot of problem solving involved in this. One of the biggest being that originally we were going to have an interface thing over it, so it'd be like Who Wants a Millionaire kind of thing. I'll show an example of this. Basically, it would go over the screen, and then during the live show, it would show and it would change and stuff like that, and it would change. So when there's a question to be asked, it would show on the screen, and then when they answered it, it would show in green the right one. So I decided to test this out. So we started testing it out, and it turns out that it actually doesn't work on the live stream, because basically the problem we had was basically there's a limited amount of like things that can be up on the screen, stuff like that, and because we're doing numbers across on the tables, it wouldn't have worked out. So a problem was that, so we decided not to do it. Another problem we had was basically because of last minute changes by the client, they wanted to get rid of some questions or add some questions, and also have videos, questions, stuff like that. It messed up the cue cards. So I built a lot of cue cards that basically be the questions and the answers, so the host could know the questions and the answers, stuff like that. So last minute we had to kind of change the cue cards, so that was another problem. The problem was client changed the last minute. The solution's kind of working out the issues and stuff like that, and rolling with the punches. I'd say this live show actually went really well. From what I can understand, it was one of the best and most viewed concurrent viewers, so most people watching it. It was a lot of fun. I think I put a lot of effort and work into it. I think I put like 30 hours or something into it, but it's something really interesting. And moving forward, I've talked with Seriously Good's head Nick about doing more stuff like this, and kind of doing a lot, really kind of doing my own unique flavour and stuff like this. So yeah, that was the Seriously Good TV live special. Just a kind of quick thing I wanted to mention, just because I've been talking about a lot, and then there's like a kind of, I guess, a conclusion to that kind of, thing that was going on. So to go over the pros and cons of this week, I say my biggest pro was my leadership skills. I think one of the biggest things I was worried about going into this project, taking on director role, is that my leadership skills. I've never really worked in a group. All our tasks have been very individual, and as I've talked about in previous videos, I'm not the best with working people. That's why I started in like tons of my videos. So I was worried about leadership, but I think I've done really well. I was really good at listening to people's ideas and kind of bouncing off them instead of dismissing them. So the biggest thing I'd done was when I was talking to Albie especially, and kind of Sarah over text, was if they had an idea, I kind of rolled with it and went, okay, how can we do that logistically and stuff like that. We really kind of talked them out, and there's some ideas I'm not the biggest fans of, but once we kind of talked it out, I kind of liked it more. And the biggest kind of thing I'd done was coming up with the anthology idea that I thought was really good, because it allowed for everyone to kind of have their own voice in the thing, because it's anthology, so it's 3 stories, everyone can do whatever they want. It allows us to do a lot more. So that was my biggest kind of pro. I think it's definitely that kind of raw leadership skills and stuff like that, and how I kind of worked in a team, led the team, but didn't take over and just go, oh, your ideas are terrible, my ideas are great. I really worked in that kind of team environment very well, kind of bouncing off each other. On the other side, I'd say my biggest con was that I think we kind of, especially once we got to the third idea, we really liked one idea a lot, and we kind of started favouring it, and I think this led to kind of clouding our judgment, so I don't really not really thinking through the ideas as much. So I think if we were to do it again, we would kind of really kind of have more of a kind of really go into each idea and have the kind of same focus and stuff like that, because I think some ideas could have worked, but because we were so forced on that anthology idea, we didn't really think it through more, and we didn't really look at it, give it the same kind of care we did for other ideas. I think that was the biggest con of today. It was kind of favouring ideas over others and stuff like that. But overall, I think this day went really well. I think working in a group, at first I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't being a fan of my group because I haven't really interacted with these two people before, and I was kind of worried about the group project. I did have a mindset of what I wanted to be in it, and obviously we're at a disadvantage because we're a group of 3, whereas a lot of the class are in a group of 4. But now I've kind of communicated with them more, and we kind of all kind of sketch out the ideas and what we want to do. I'm actually very excited for this group project. I think it's going to be a really interesting opportunity for me, especially the person who doesn't really work in a group, that much. So I think it's going to be a really interesting project. So the next day was Friday. This is when we had a big group meeting, kind of went over everything. Okay, so Friday, this was over Zoom. This was the biggest reason for this because we can record it. So as you can see on my website, I've uploaded all the group meetings. So the first thing we've done was we kind of went over each idea and kind of thought of pros and cons. So for example, some ideas, the pro would be that it allowed us a lot of creativity. On the other side, the con would be that, logistically it's going to be a nightmare to do because, there's 3 of us, but we've still got our usual limitations of budget, location, stuff like that. So kind of this helped us kind of really work out this idea, and because we had that day in between, it really kind of gave us time to kind of refresh and really look at this with a new kind of face. So we ended up going with this anthology idea because 1, it was our favourite, B, 2, it allowed more creativity and stuff like that, and C, it allowed everyone to kind of have the idea. So the basic idea was it was 3 film students that were all kind of pitching ideas, so it would be kind of very meta for a group project, and then each idea would be shown like 2 to 3 minute vignette. Also, the biggest pro of this, it made editing very easy because 3 ideas and then in betweens. So the idea was that I would edit a segment, because Albie was taking on much more heavy cinematography role, he would edit the in between because he's not the best at editing, and then Sarah would take on 2 segments. So once we kind of worked out our idea, we kind of started roughly planning this out. So what we basically done was we sat in kind of a Zoom call and we kind of talked about it, what kind of ideas we want to do, and really kind of roughly planned it out. This is also the first time we kind of talk to Sarah from face to face because unfortunately she was ill the day before, and then for the pros and cons meeting she was again couldn't make it. So we kind of roughly worked out the film. What we done was this big kind of document. We kind of talked about the film. I wrote it as the director. I kind of wrote what everyone was saying. We kind of worked out each kind of film segment and what we wanted to do. We ended up deciding on 3 film segments. The first would have been a kind of horror, kind of thriller, influenced by Blair Witch, stuff like that, set in the woods. The second was more of a sci-fi kind of drama, and the third was a surrealist kind of thing, to kind of play a surrealist nightmare. And they all kind of, we worked out how to cater all these films kind of act like the characters we were creating on screen, and I think this went really well. And then once we really started doing that, we basically decided to write the script as a group because we realised the script was the core of the film. So if we got the script done, then in the in between we could we could all work on some assets. I decided to write the script, given the direction and stuff like that. And what we basically done was, you can see this in the video, but I'll basically explain it. I sat on there on Zoom and shared my screen to Celltext, the script writing website, trying to make it more professional. And as I was writing, we all kind of talked about it and what we wanted to say, and I kind of ingested the ideas and said, okay, this is a dialogue. And I think this really worked well in a group of 3 because we all kind of co-wrote it, but I said I'm the lead writer, and it kind of really helped chill our ideas together and stuff like that. And then basically what we've done was, because it's Friday, we're planning to shoot Wednesday. So basically what we said is we kind of all had our pre-production job roles. So just to go over the job roles, because I'm the director, I decided to take on risk assessment, location scouting and stuff like that. So we're thinking of filming Discovery and stuff like that. So what I'd done was done a risk assessment, a location recce, and I went to Discovery, took some pictures, kind of worked out locations. Albie, as he's the lead cinematographer, basically what I had him do was basically go through the script and apply like a shot list for each kind of bit, and then we kind of talked it over a bit, and then Sarah would make an editing plan and kind of go more into theory of it and like colour grading, stuff like that for the editing, so it's easier for her to edit. So overall, if we're talking pros and cons, I would say my biggest pro is definitely the leadership again. I thought my leadership were great again, and again, great again because I was able to listen to people's ideas and really work well. And I think you can see this in the videos. It's kind of very much, I'm always trying to bring in people. Sarah, who's in our group, is kind of very shy, but I decided to try and really get her into it. So I asked questions like that and really tried to make sure that she felt part of the group. And what I basically done was, when I was writing the script, I talked to Albie and I was like, okay, what kind of cinematography you want to do, because it's the lead cinematographer, and the first film is very cinematography heavy, and I went, so you know, what do you want to do editing wise, because the second film is the Siriusly one, it's very editing heavy. So I kind of really made sure that their part, they felt like they were included and stuff like that, and they were able to kind of express themselves quite a bit. So I think that's my biggest problem. My biggest con of today is I think the script kind of felt a bit weak in parts, and it was very much, I think we leaned too much on shot list, so we could have got a bit more detail on the script. So if I was to do it again, and I think this was also a time constraint limit, I would definitely kind of, you know, sorry, I would definitely like put more detail into the script and make it just more detailed script wise, and maybe challenge myself a bit more, because as I've always talked about, I think script is my weakest point, and I think this would be a good opportunity to have more focused script. But for example, like the first film segment, that was very much more visuals. I think that leaned too much on the visuals, and that made it difficult for especially Albie, because he had to do a lot more. So I think if we were to do it again, we'd have kind of much stronger script. So let's just go into the overall wrap up of this week and set myself a target. Okay, overall, I think this was a really good start to the kind of group project as a week. I'm really confident. At first, I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't the biggest fan of my group, just because I haven't worked on it before, but I think once we got into it and really started like going off each other, it went really well. I think one of the biggest things that we learned in this group is the problem solving, and we talked about this constantly. I was going to like kind of problems we had was that one of the biggest problems we had obviously as a group, and obviously I've always had, is the limitations we have due to us being students and not having, you know, tons of money. You know, ideally we would have like cool locations, stuff like that, but we had to really think about how to make this cinematic, so how to really make this into a film. And obviously we can't film in the cottage, that was one of the things. So basically what we decided to do was film into Discovery. I live right next to Discovery, it's a big kind of open field, and we kind of really nailed the script to that area. So we really thought, how can we get the most out of this area? So for example, the thriller, it was set in a forest, so we thought, you know, we use Discovery, that's very foresty and stuff like that, so it works well. Or again, with the sci-fi drama, we wanted it to be more open, so that's what we used the field area. And what I always kept in mind was, I don't want to repeat myself, or, you know, I don't want to make these locations look the same. And I think we really nailed how to make it look cinematic and stuff like that. So I think that's one of our biggest problems we overcame. Another problem we had was that, like, you know, obviously we all work so used to working on our own, and kind of, you know, this is our first kind of group project working with other people. I mean, you know, I have massive issues with that, because, you know, everyone's got different personalities and stuff like that. But I think how we overcome this problem was really kind of just listening to each other, and also this anthology idea really allowed everyone to kind of bring their own thing. Obviously Sarah wasn't, due to her illness, wasn't really part of the planning and stuff like that, and the pros and cons. So what I allowed her was, I said to Sarah, because she wanted to really do editing, I was like, here's a whole segment for yourself that you can focus on the editing. So overall, I think that the biggest pro of this week was kind of my leadership and really working in that group environment. And I think I really nailed it down, because I was really kind of good at listening to people and stuff like that. On the other side, the con of the week, I think, was just kind of the script felt very weak and stuff like that, and it could have been stronger. So basically my plan is for next week, in between now and next week, is to punch up the script a bit more, talk to Albie about more of the shot list, and obviously get all my risk assessment and group project stuff done. So that was the beginning of group project. Sorry, it was a smaller kind of segment, smaller kind of video. It's just, you know, it's kind of difficult. It's a lot more planning and stuff like that. But next week, hopefully, beginning the filming, putting together the film, and really kind of nailing that group project. So I'll see you next week.